Hey, welcome to the show Legacy Makers Podcast, a space where we dive deep into what it means to live with a purpose, with a passion, and an impact. This show isn't for dreamers. This show is for doers. Every man who knows that he's meant for more, who feels that there is a fire inside, but he just needs a roadmap to turn their potential into a lasting legacy. This podcast is for you. The man who is ready to create something that outlasts him, changes lives, his future. Whether you are just starting your journey or you're already on a path, our mission is simple: to equip you with the mindset, tools, and inspiration to become a true legacy maker. Each episode will be packed with insights, stories, and strategies to help you unlock your potential. We'll tackle real work, building discipline, making impactful decisions, overcoming setbacks, and living intentionally so your actions today set the foundation for your legacy that endures. Here's the truth. Being a legacy maker doesn't mean having all figured out. It's about recognizing that within you lies everything that you need to create that impact you were born to make. You were made for greatness, and now is the time to step into that truth. So wherever you're listening, remember this: the power to leave a legacy is already inside of you. This podcast will help you to unlock your potential step by step. So let's build something extraordinary together. Welcome to the journey. Let's get started.
In that moment, I was just overcome. Like, I'm even getting chills right now, just a reminder of it. Because in that moment, I realized my spiritual eyes were open. This is the life that I was called to live. Is that everywhere I go, every person I meet, everyone that I know has to know the story of Jesus. This is what I was made and crafted to do. It's not just from the pulpit. It's not just from the platform. It's not just in ministry. But everywhere I go, this is what I'm called to do. And so that moment, of course, we celebrate with them, and it was an awesome moment. But that moment definitely was a pivotal moment in my faith.
Hey guys, I am beyond excited this morning to welcome our guest to the podcast today to dive into season 2, Defining the Odds to Leave a Legacy. This young man is someone that I deeply admire and respect. I had the privilege to get to know him over the last few years, and his story is nothing short of inspiring, and I have no doubt that it will resonate with each and every one of you as you're listening. So I want to invite you to just lean in and let the Lord speak to you. He's the only one of his family who has earned a bachelor's degree. He himself put himself through college. By the age of 21, he already purchased his own home, a remarkable accomplishment. Not only he has made waves in the business world, but he also has served as minister and a pastor. And today he serves as pastor of one of our local churches in the DFW area. And if it wasn't that impressive enough to you, he holds one of the greatest titles of all. He is the husband of one of the most incredible women in the universe. After my wife, of course. His wife, his amazing wife, is my daughter, Izzy. So he is my son. He is my son-in-law. So I am so excited. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce with you Drex Rasco. Come on, give it up for Drex. Drex, welcome, brother. How's it going today, man?
What's up, man? It's great. It's great. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. And I was going to be mad at you, bro, if you didn't talk about the best title of all.
Hey, man, you earned it. You earned it. You have done everything that was there to do right. So, that's why we say yes. A lot of you probably are listening and you're thinking, man, am I too old to start building a legacy? Or am I too young to build a legacy? Let me tell you, there is never, no matter where you are in your journey, never is too late or too early. If you're a young man or you have a son, I want you to tell you, there is never too early to start building that legacy, to start building the foundation. And that's what I'm so excited for Drex this morning. And Drex, why don't you just tell us a little bit about who you are? Introduce yourself a little bit so people can get to know you before we dive into today's episode.
Yeah, what's up, man? It's great to listen to this podcast, and I hope I meet some of you behind the screen one day. But yeah, my name is Drex, like Roger said. I'm 23 years old. I'm a student pastor here in the DFW area. Yeah, man, that's a little bit about me.
23. I don't remember when I was 23, but man, you're looking good. You're looking good. But Drex, why don't we dive a little bit into the struggles? I know that your life in the beginning, you were filled with a lot of challenges, different challenges, and different things that you had to endure as a young man. And can you just share a little bit more about those struggles that you faced growing up that could have defined you, could have set you up for a path that probably would not be where you are today?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think even for a little while in my early season of life, they maybe did define me, maybe did mark every decision I made. But then I had to realize, and then we'll talk about that pivotal moment later. But when I was 5 years old, my earliest memory is my family lived in a duplex. And I remember I woke up on a Saturday morning and all the furniture was gone. I walk outside, there's a massive U-Haul truck and my dad's driving away. I never got a hug. I never got a see you later. I never got a goodbye. And it marked me because everything that I had looked up to in my home was gone. It just disappeared one day. And so this moment, marked every decision I made leading up to the next couple of years. When I got a good report card, I came home and dad wasn't there to celebrate. So it messed with me. When I, had a good game on the field, I looked in the stands, dad wasn't there. So it didn't really matter. And so everything I did, either if it was good or bad, it was marked by this hole, this vacancy in my life. And so, yeah, it messed with me a lot of my upbringing and a lot of my early life.
Man, I mean, I tell you what, man, I feel it because, I've talked to a lot of men who have a lot of wounds from things like this happening. But with all of that, Drex, can you walk us, can you take us to the room, to the moment, to where that pivotal moment happened, to where something shifted in you that you said, I'm not going to be defined by this. When you realized you were meant for more, that moment when you were like, man, I don't want that, I want that. Can you walk us into that specific moment?
For sure. For the next couple of years after my dad left, my mom was depressed. So she was like, we lived with her, but it felt like she wasn't really around. And me and my siblings had to fend for ourselves. And so leading up into the second grade, that was just life. If we wanted a meal, it felt like we had to cook it. If we wanted to sign up for a team, we had to go figure out how. And this was just life. This is all I knew, really. And I remember in the second or third grade, the school counselor had called me into her office. I don't know if I was being a bad kid or if I was making bad grades or what was going on, but I get called into her office and she sits me down and she says, what's going on? And I do not want to talk to her. I do not want to open up. I'm kind of defiant and I'm just have this mean face on. I'm like, no, I'm not talking to you. So she keeps asking, what's going on? And a couple minutes later, she just says, what do you want to do in life, Drex? What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to see happen? What's your dreams? What's your goals? And I thought for a second, and I think in this moment, I didn't really think about how profound this actually was, but it was just based off my current situation. I said three things. The first is that I wanted to graduate college. The thing is about me, and Roger mentioned earlier, is that nobody had graduated with a 4-year degree up until that point. And so it was impossible for me, but it was something they always talked about in school. And I realized that people that graduate with a degree made more money. And I was like, I want a college degree because I want to make more money. The second thing I said was, a school counselor, I never want to have food stamps. The reason why I said this is because I remember going to the store with my mom and all we had was food stamps. And so we would all be able to pick out one thing at the beginning of the month. But after that, we couldn't because food stamps would run out and therefore we had to buy the essential groceries. And so I didn't get to pick my own groceries. So food stamps to me at second grade was like, that means you don't get to pick out what you want to eat. So I was like, I don't want food stamps because I want to pick out everything I want to eat. I want the frozen pizzas. I want the mac and cheese. I want the ice cream, right? So I was like, I don't want to pay food stamps. And the third thing I told her is I don't want to pay rent. And the reason why I said this at second grade is because I remember in my house, every time the rent was due, my mom would get frustrated and upset and angry, and it would actually be taken out on us in the home. And so I remember that I didn't really even know what rent was at the time, but I just knew that it was something bad. I just knew that the way that it affected me and my siblings when we were young and the way that it put this dark cloud over our house. I said these three things. I said, I want to graduate with a 4-year degree. And I want to, I don't want to have to pay food stamps and I don't want to pay rent. And after I said these three things to her, she looks at me and she goes, hey, Drex, I'm sorry, but kids from a home like yours, this just isn't possible. I remember when she told me this and looked me in the face in second grade and I was distraught. I was mad. I was angry. I was like, what the heck? She asked me and I finally answered her question and then she slaps me in the face basically. But in that moment, I realized I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to find a way to make this happen because I wanted something more for me. I wanted something different than the lifestyle that I was living at the time.
Man, that is incredible, man. Especially knowing that you're that young, realize what you don't want and what you wanted, which is remarkable. And that lets us know that that even kids they started to form patterns of either I'm gonna follow this path or I'm not, and it is just incredible. But one of the things that I've heard that, meeting with a ton of men is the importance to find a strong supportive community, strong men. And I know that was one of the things that really helped you to continue into that path of building your own legacy. Can you share when you would discover that for yourself, when you realize, man, I need to surround myself with a group of men or people that I can look up to, that can pour into me, when that happened to you?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's several men, like many of us, that have played a pivotal role in our life. And I think the first is definitely my grandpa. I know that's kind of cliche, but he really did play an essential role in my early years in terms of my faith, in terms of moral values and the moral compass, all that sort of thing, and work ethic and hard work. But I think in junior high is when I think a lot of things changed. But in junior high, I met my youth pastor at the time, and he had an essential role in developing and discipling me through junior high and high school, and even today, just all these years. And I just realized what I think I saw somebody that was living for something that I thought was worth living for. And so then I wanted to follow them. I wanted to figure out why they did it, what they did, what their mornings looked like, what their routine was like, what their rhythm was like, how did they serve, how did they worship, all of these things. And so, I would just kind of pick them apart. I would hang out with them and just kind of pick them apart in terms of like, what do they do? What's different about them? Because honestly, I think it's pretty easy for all of us to look around the world and say, oh, I want to be like them, or I don't want to be like them, right? You see the person at Walmart, you're like, I don't want their lifestyle. But like, it's pretty easy to pick apart, like, oh, like these are the kind of people that I would love to be like. And so I just picked, 3 or 4 men that were in my life that I knew and just followed them around. That's what I would say. I spent a lot of time with them and just decided, you know what, I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to try it, And so I just started hanging out with them as much as I could. And so, yeah, that was kind of how I found my people.
Man, that is awesome. That is awesome. And one of the things that when you were saying that really resonated in my heart is that, and you never once mentioned, how many sermons they preached to you or how many pep talks they had with you. It was what they were living. Their example of how their life was conducted. And, it really it's all about our testimony. Guys, if you are raising a young man and if you're raising children, it is important to know that it's what you do that matters the most. It's not really what you say, what you do. And look at, this youth pastor poured into Drake's truth, but yet it was his testimony, the way that he conducted his life, that caused Drex to say, man, I want that. I want that for my life, which is important. And but Drex, through your journey, you have been in so many turning points, right? There has been those moments that almost like if you were to build memorials, they're gonna be there as moments in your life. But one that really stands out is your faith. You have never been shy of your faith. I've been with you in the stores and you always are very upfront. Hey man, bless you. Can I pray for you? And things like that. Can you share how your faith in the Lord has become the essential, almost like your life is who you are?
Yeah.
What specific moment of experience that solidified your faith that is true in your very depths of your soul? It's not something that you don't hear, but it's something that is just part of who you are.
Yeah, for sure. I think up until leading up to the 9th grade, the people that I knew or that was my family or my close circle, they did not serve God on a daily basis. And so quickly I realized this is a collective group, and the people that don't serve God on a daily basis, this is what life is like. And so quickly I realized, okay, I'm going to figure out this God thing. I'm going to figure out this Jesus thing. And so I start going to church and I get saved, I get baptized, all this stuff. And I would say I'm living the cliche Christian life, right? I'm showing up on Sundays. I'm showing up on Wednesday nights. I read my Bible 3 times a year, and it's good, right? Like this is what I was doing. And I remember right before 9th grade, I went on a mission trip that my youth pastor took me on. We're in Colombia, and our job there is to evangelize and share the gospel. And as soon as, I get there, and that's when they tell us the mission. I think he wanted me to sign up thinking I was going on vacation. And we get there, he's like, you got to share the gospel. I'm like, no, I don't want to do this. And I had never in my life shared the gospel before that week. And it was just jam-packed. Every day we're just going door to door sharing the gospel in Colombia. And there's a pivotal moment. I remember it was the last day of the trip. And the night before there had been a cartel that had ran through the town. And so it was like we were kind of on high alert. And there was just always these rules that day. And so I remember it was like 3:30 and they were like, hey, hit your last house now before it gets dark. We're going to get back. And so I'm looking around and I'm like, okay, last house, I got to make the most impact, right? I'm just on this like massive roller coaster of evangelism momentum. I'm so excited and juiced up for the gospel. And so I find this house that has a bunch of kids in it because I'm like, oh, this is the most people, like it'll make the most impact. And so I go up to this house and they've got kids running around everywhere. Like I'm talking like 1s and 2s and 3 years old. Most of them can't talk. They're crawling around. They're walking around. It's just bonkers in there. Like way too many kids for this small area. And I just, hey, I want to, I through my translator, I just tell them the gospel. The dad of the daycare is what it was, ran out of his house. And, he accepts Jesus right there in that moment. It was a really awesome moment because I could see the story really captivated him. And I could tell that he had never heard the gospel before. And so he looks at me, he's like, hey, wait here just 1 second. Let me go upstairs and grab my wife and my son. And so he goes upstairs and comes down with his wife and son. And you could tell they're like, what the heck is going on? There's this white guy in our living room, right? And they ask, he tells us, hey, tell me the same story you just told me. Like, don't change any words. Tell me the same story. And so through the translator, I tell them the same story about Jesus and how he's here to save us and how I came here from America to tell them this story. And the wife and the son, they get saved right there in that moment. They accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior. And then the dad is just crying. Like he's so emotional, right? Because it's just his family just got saved and he just heard the gospel for the first time. And so he looks at my translator and says, hey, hang out for just a few minutes. And the translator looks at me and goes, hey, he said to hang out for a few minutes. And by the time I heard that, the guy was already gone. Like he was just down the street. So I was like, okay. So I'm watching these 20 kids in his living room and hanging out. And for a few minutes, I'm like, all right, this is cool. This is fun. None of them know what I'm saying. And they're just climbing all over me. It's fun. And then he's like, it's a couple minutes past. I'm like, okay, what's going on? This is getting a little weird now. And so I told him to watch. And so I look around the street and this guy had gathered all of his neighbors, all of them. He had just gotten them all out of their houses and started sharing the same gospel that he had just shared with me. And in that moment, I was just overcome. Like I'm even getting chills right now, just a reminder of it. Because in that moment, I realized my spiritual eyes were open. This is the life that I was called to live, is that everywhere I go, every person I meet, everyone that I know has to know the story of Jesus. This is what I was made and crafted to do. It's not just from the pulpit. It's not just from the platform. It's not just in ministry, but everywhere I go, this is what I'm called to do. And so that moment, of course we celebrate with them and it was an awesome moment, but that moment definitely was a pivotal moment in my faith because it opened my eyes. It made me realize, okay, everywhere I go, everything I do, this is what I'm called to do. And the next day we fly back to America. And I remember me and my buddy that were there, we were like, hey, we got to go evangelize. So as soon as we got back to America, we were wearing the same clothes from the day before because it was an overnight flight. And we go straight for the mall that was in our town and we started evangelizing. And I would say we haven't stopped since. That was a pivotal moment for my faith for sure.
Man, Drake, that is incredible. Really is what resonated with my heart while you were sharing that is because it took me obviously to a lot of places in my memory, but when you see the Lord in action and almost like if this hand just reached down and rescue people from dying, and then people ask, what do you believe? Well, I saw the hand. I mean, nobody told me. I saw the hand coming. When you actually see him in action, it's incredible. One of the things that you said a couple of things was, it was this passion that I had. Can you tell us what identifies your passion? And what do you do to pursue that passion? And one of the things I want to say is that I've seen you outside the ministry in a sense. I've seen you operate on the business sector. I got you to help me on a business that I needed to get done, and then you helped me. So I saw you operating outside the church, quote unquote, because a lot of you guys that are listening are gonna think, well, this guy is all that because he's working for the church. Drake's, even though right now is working as a pastor, he was working in the secular business, dealing with rough people, in the auto industry, and his passion was resonated in everything that he was doing. So how do you identify your passion, Drake, and how do you pursue it on a daily basis?
Yeah, that's good. That's a really good question. Thank you for that. I would say shortly after this mission trip, I realized what I love the most is building up people. I love it. I love encouraging them. I love edifying them. I love showing them something that they don't even believe in themselves, and seeing them build their life and their legacy. And what's so funny, man, is when I was 6 years old, I created an email called Drex the Builder because I love Bob the Builder. And never did I know that this was going to be my biggest passion, that I love building people. So I think it's just so funny. So I still use that email. It's kind of goofy, but anyways, I would say my, when I found that and when I kind of learned how to steward my passion well, I'm in the middle of high school. and I want to see Jesus in my school. Like I'm used to Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights, and it's so much fun, but I want to see like God move in my school. And so I just start using my circle of influence, which I'm going to be completely vulnerable. In the 10th grade, I had, the circle of influence level 5, like so small, right? It was not big. There was not many people that would listen to me or wanted to be around me or wanted to hang out. But I just used my small circle of influence, and we just began to meet for, a Bible study in the middle of school. And this thing just started growing. It just, the first couple of weeks it was real slow, but eventually it started growing and having a lot of momentum. And I realized quickly, okay, this is like, for some reason, this is something that God's gifted me with. And it wasn't really about ministry. It wasn't even really about gathering people to read the Word of God, but really what it was about was building people. Really what it was about was bringing people together and saying, what can we do to influence and impact the kingdom of God? And so I realized this. And so I just kind of took this wherever I went. I was working at Chick-fil-A at the time. And, at Chick-fil-A, this is kind of silly, but there's somebody at every Chick-fil-A that's called the dining room cleanup. And so all their job is to bus tables, check in on drinks, and clean up stuff. That's all you're supposed to do. And everyone hated this at the Chick-fil-A I worked at. And for some reason, I was like, I'm going to try it. I tried it, and I fell in love with it. And so I just would always ask, can I get put on dining room? Can I put on dining room? And they always gave it to me because no one else wanted to do it, right? It was the job that nobody wanted. And the reason why I loved it is because it was an opportunity for me to meet people. It was an opportunity for me to talk to people. It was an opportunity for me to meet people where they're at and pray with them and get to know them and encourage them. And so I just started doing this. And every single night of the week, I would be working and I would do this. This is what I did. And I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I fell in love with it. And so I began to just take this wherever I went. In the business world, I was a sales rep in the auto industry. And this is what I did. I would meet grown men that have way too much money to spend on their truck. And they would, spend $20,000. They would drive in from West Texas as they're working in the oil field. They would come over for the weekend. We'd fix their truck up on Friday. They'd pick it up on Monday and head back to work. And I remember people would come, and I remember this one specific story. I think his name was Sebastian, and he comes in, and young guy, has it all going for him, looks good, a great looking truck, brand new truck, and we lift it, looks even better. And as he's leaving, I just remember, I just was sitting down with him. We had just paid, and, I'm about to give him his receipt, and we're sitting down across from each other, and I just asked him, I was like, man, what are you living for? I don't know why I felt compelled, but I just did. I was like, I'm just going to ask him, what are you living for? He looked at me and he goes, I've never thought about that. I'm like, okay. And so then I just began to share with him what I'm living for. And in that moment, I was like, man, I wish I could just give him a Bible, because I shared, of course, the story of Jesus. He's like, dude, that's dope. That's awesome. I've been away from church. I've been away from God. I really would really love to know him. And so he leaves, and when I pray with him, he leaves, and he's driving back to West Texas. And I always remember just having this burning passion. I wish I gave him a Bible. I wish I could equip him. And so I remember that day I went to my boss and said, hey, I want to give this guy a Bible. And so my boss ordered hundreds of Bibles. We're going to keep them in the showroom and give them to people. And we actually shipped Sebastian a Bible to his home in West Texas, because we're like, oh, we want to equip him. And so, yeah, man, I would say I found that it honestly just came upon me. I wish I knew, this is how I discovered my passion. Honestly, I just found it. I just tried multiple things and I found it. And then when I realized what it was, I just was like, you know what? I know some people think, okay, serving Jesus applies to the church, but I was like, you know what? It applies to every area of my life. And so I just took it everywhere. I took it to the business world. I took it to the grocery store. I took it to the basketball court. I took it everywhere. I took it to places where I wasn't even living for God. And I'll be honest, on the basketball court, I was throwing cuss words. I was not living for Jesus, but I was like, man, I got to take Jesus here too. And I just found that this was my passion to build people up. And so I just started doing it everywhere.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome, man. It resonates. Obviously, I've been, like I said, I've been with Drake in different places, different scenarios, and the passion for what he believes in. And he's a builder. He really builds people up. And whenever you spend any time with Drake, you feel much better. He always tells me, man, you're looking good today. I'm like, okay, I feel better now. But Drake, to finalize this, I want to ask you this specific question. Looking at everything that you have achieved up to this point in your life, I mean, you have accomplished a lot. What results are you the most proud of, and how do you envision your future moving forward? Obviously, result of your hard work.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I could point to. I could point to some financial things that, I just thought was impossible, or I thought maybe I'd reach this at the age of 40. The house that me and my wife live in, I'm like, maybe I could get to that house when I'm 40 years old. And somehow by the grace of God and the favor of God, we're living there now. I could think to many crazy stories and testimonies to when I met a young man at the park on a prayer walk. And at that time, he did not live for Jesus. A week before, his brother had died. and he gets saved. And then, a year later, we figure out he can sing. So now he's a worship leader, a worship pastor at a church. And so there's some crazy stories I could point to too. But I think the thing that I would say I'm the most proud of is right now at the age of 23, I go home to a loving home and a loving wife, and my family loves Jesus. My family serves God, and there's no question about it. Internally, externally, everything that we do is to serve him. Every decision we make is based off of what does it do to impact the kingdom, or how does this influence people around us for Jesus? And so, yeah, I would say that's my biggest accomplishment, man. I know that maybe that's not the, people listening, maybe that's not the most flashy thing, but for me, I'm like, this is game changing, because I know what will happen in 10 years from now. I know what will happen from 20 years from now when I have a son and a daughter, and they get raised up in a house that loves God, because I know what it was like without it. I know what it was like when this wasn't the way that my parents looked or served God, or the way that they loved each other. This was not the way that it was done. And so for me to have this right now of man, I have a wife that loves me, that supports me, that encourages me, that prays for me. And to be able to go home to a home, to actually go home to a home. I don't know up until this point in my life, I've ever actually had a home until right now. Yeah, man, that's probably my most proud accomplishment up until this point in my life.
That was really, really powerful and really profound. And it's going to resonate to people, because how many of you guys go home to a home, and it's a home that you're building. That's not a home that should be already built for you. That's a home that you're building. And every moment, every decision, like Drake said, every decision that you make, every choice that you make, is you're building those walls of the home that you want to go to. But as we conclude this podcast, I want to reflect on man, there are a couple of things that I want to highlight. The resilience that Drake's had, even in the environment that he grew up, he had a resilience within him. He had a vision. He had a desire. And that desire was placed inside of him. That's the thing that you need to understand. Every one of us has been placed inside of you. That the part of God that wants to be awakened. And so Drake, at the young age, he tapped into that and was able to step into with resilience and find out only that he cannot do it on his own. So he found community. And not only he found community, he found strength in the faith of something beyond himself. And not only that, but through that faith, he began to live with a purpose. So I'm going to ask you, and as Drake is doing that at the age of 23, he's building a legacy built on resilience, community, faith, and purpose. So the question that I'm going to ask each and every one of you that is listening to me today is, do you have a resilience to live this life that God is giving you freely? Do you have a community around you to strengthen you and support you and encourage you? Is your faith strong enough that no matter how strong the winds are, it's not going to move you? And do you have a purpose? Because that's how you make a legacy that is going to last beyond yourself. So I just want to say thank you, Drex, for being with us. Thank you so much for sharing with us your life testimony. Thank you for making time. And thank you for every one of you who listened today. I hope this blessed you. And if it did, I just encourage you to give it a like, share it with somebody. Somebody really needs to hear this. If this wasn't for you, share it with somebody. I promise you, somebody's going to resonate with this. And if not, share it with your son. I promise you, he's going to take a look at this. He's going to say, wow, I need to start my legacy right now. Talk to you soon, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Drex.